podcast as presented by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the podcast where we cover No Man's Land, the epic late 90s, turn of the century Batman saga, and everything related to it. My name is Vincent, and I'm joined by my two regular hosts.
Mike.
Michael.
This week, this episode, we are talking about kind of a hodgepodge of issues. They're all one-off stories. There's not even really like subplot stuff going through them. And so 4 cool stories, and we'll see what we think of each of them. And I think Mike's going to kick us right off.
Right, yes. We're going to start off with Batman Legends of the Dark Knight number 118 from Greg Rucka, and then Jason Pearson and James A. Hodgkins are the artists credited on this issue. I like the cover with kind of Batman reaching through fire as he's all in shadow. I think that's always a fun image as a cover. But the issue opens with a splash page of like Batman dropping down, beating up a bunch of thugs. Though the whole story is Alfred narrating and telling a story to 2 children at Leslie Tompkins's shelter about the Squire and the Knight, and obviously Alfred's the Squire and Batman being the Knight. But the whole device here is telling us what Alfred has been up to at that time that Bruce wasn't in Gotham City, when he was kind of outside it and not protecting it after going to Washington, D.C. before he came back to Gotham. So kind of composed of all of the skills Alfred has learned in his time. He cheered people up by being an actor and putting on shows for them. He used his skills as a spy to spy on different gangs. And it doesn't say that he was reporting to Oracle at that time, but I think maybe headcanon-wise, I think it'd be cool if he was. But he was mostly just keeping an eye on the different territories. But then he was also kind of going around and gathering supplies and trying to keep people safe and beating up. He was kind of taking out thugs and mending injuries with his medical expertise. Kind of a jack of all trades, as he was kind of carving out his place in Gotham before Batman came back. And the kids keep interrupting him, like, "Oh, this is a kind of a boring story and whatnot." But it really is just kind of the outlet for Alfred, showing that Alfred is totally capable of handling his own, and he always has been. We saw that earlier, and I think in one of the Batman Chronicles stories, when he was able to beat out all like that whole gang that was like in Wayne Manor trying to take that over. So I think it's again cool. We've gotten 2 kind of solo Alfred stories now of him helping in No Man's Land. But this is kind of the story of where Batman shows back up again. At least from what I take it as one of their first meetings back. As he kind of makes the kids feel better, and then goes back to Batman kind of plotting their next move to help the city. But overall, I thought this was pretty fun. I thought Rucka knows these characters very well, and I think the voice for Batman and Alfred here is really, really good, especially with how he pulled in and made use of all of the different skills that we've seen Alfred have and learned over the years of his service.
I think it's funny because, number one, of course, Knight and Squire eventually end up being like Batman characters. And then I want to comment, I don't really understand, because at the end, Alfred reports back to Bruce and they're like planning whatever they're going to do next, but it's also like he's kind of like reporting on this area.
Yeah.
So I guess he was like, I don't know if he was doing scouting in the meantime, or if like his storytelling was the scouting, or if this is like some weird like propaganda for the kids. Like, hey, aspire to be the Knight and Squire, not the gang members. Or it was kind of.
I think you can take it as a little bit of that, but also, Alfred's good friends with Leslie Tompkins. It's kind of hinted that they've had a romantic link in the past. So it would make perfect sense for Bruce kind of to send Alfred to check on the area while Batman's doing other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a really cool story, but I feel like the story doesn't fully convey like why is Alfred telling a story to some kids.
Yeah, I agree.
Need that, but you could have put something there.
I thought the art was all right. Like, we've seen worse and we've seen better. It just kind of it's there. It's fine.
So Jason Pearson, he was part of a kind of studio system called Gaijin Studios. which Gaijin Studios was based out of Atlanta, and it was a collective of artists. And the main guys were Brian Stelfreeze, Cully Hamner, Carl Story, but you had other guys go through there: Adam Hughes, Jason Pearson, obviously in this issue, Dave Johnson, Tony Harris, George Genti, Laura Martin. And the studio existed from like 1991 to 2010. And Pearson in the early 90s, as part of the studio, and before it, was working on some Legion of Superheroes books. And then all of Gaijin like just almost made a deal with Image. And this is early on Image, so Image would have taken on and launched a bunch of books for a lot of these guys, including Jason Pearson. And something just didn't work out, and it didn't go through. Image didn't decide to bring them on. And some of those guys did end up working some things for Image, like Dave Johnson did some stuff for Eric Larson's titles and stuff like that. But Pearson didn't get his gig, so several years later, he eventually published his indie book Body Bags through Dark Horse, and later it's been picked up by other publishers. I believe it's probably an Image now again. But yeah, I think his art is all right. I'm not as familiar with a lot of his other stuff, but I just found it interesting because he's basically a guy who was like pretty acclaimed and popular for those who followed his work, but never had the huge big two break, and then just barely missed a big Image break in the heydays of Image.
I see a little bit of Rick Burchett in his faces.
Also, there's a weird Woodrow Wilson quote at the end here.
Yeah, there is. Whatever.
All right, Michael, you have any thoughts?
Not really. It was a fun little issue. Weird nitpick I have is that I feel like in the Middle Ages, a squire usually tended to be a younger, like, knight in training. So if anyone's Batman's squire, it would be Robin. Maybe Alfred's more like his steward or something. But I don't think that was exclusively the case necessarily. And squires taking on other meanings in English title holding and whatever. So whatever. It's a story for the kids. Doesn't have to follow the exact rules of medieval whatever.
Yep. So moving on to our second issue, Batman Shadow of the Bat number 86. This is called Home Sweet Home, written by Lisa Klink and drawn by Guy Davis. Klink, we mentioned earlier, she did one of the Chronicle story, and not to repeat the entire gist, but if I recall correctly, she's just like maybe a minor editor, and she didn't do hardly any jobs in comics. Guy Davis, on the other hand, he did his breakout job was drawing a bunch of Sandman Mystery Theater, and then he did this indie book for Dark Horse called The Marquis, which is like super detailed, and then he was the primary artist on BPRD for a long time, and then he, as tragically as many artists do, he retired from comic books and now works in concept art for films and animation and stuff like that. Does a lot of stuff with Del Toro. He's worked on Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, Strain, and other things. But the actual story here, first we see Batgirl trying to stop a gang fight between some Zaz guys and Croc guys, but she has to retreat because she's just outnumbered. And then the main focus here is we meet Sergeant William S. Riley, and he's kind of like the old guy from Up, where he built his house on this Gotham street decades ago.
It's Up mixed with Gran Torino.
Yeah. He built it with his wife, this house on a Gotham street after the war, and they couldn't have kids. That's not really delved into too deeply, but he kind of became like the father figure of the block. Like a lot of it's implied that, obviously his neighborhood has gone downhill, but it was never like necessarily, like tip top shape. So he would help mentor and teach a lot of the kids who had like rougher home life and everything like that, and including this one kid. I forget his name. It doesn't matter a ton, but there's this one kid in particular that he helped out. And even as the city of Gotham has gone downhill, as his neighborhood has gone downhill, as buildings around him kind of were abandoned and everything, and then the quake, of course, he's still here because he's not going to abandon his post. His wife has passed away at some point along the way, and he gets accosted by some Zaz goons, and Zaz himself shows up and demands tribute, and he just gives in because, you know, number one, he doesn't want to die, and number two, he doesn't want to, like, I don't know, you know, potentially endanger other people around him and stuff like that. So he pays tribute, but then it doesn't matter anyways because he has a secret bomb shelter, just a ton of stock, and he helps out people in the neighborhood that way. And then he gets accosted by these two goons who are from one of the generic gangs, like not one of the ones related to a villain. And it turns out one of the kids he helped like raise and mentor. And there's like this tense standoff moment, really dramatic, where the kid's like, the question is whether the kid's going to pull the trigger on his father figure. But it's all kind of, the tension is killed anticlimactic by the Joker's crew just blasting through the wall and gunning down these kids. And the Joker, he kind of just like has a stalemate with Sergeant Riley, where he's like, I'll respect you for having balls, and then the Joker leaves, and Riley is not going to leave either. I thought this was a pretty cool story. It's like a good like Tales from Gotham, essentially, where we have that quick Batgirl segment, and I think there might even be like a page or two of Batman. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. This is all about just how the random citizens of Gotham react to the status quo and react to the villains and the city around them. And every once in a while, these are often really, really interesting Batman stories.
Yeah, this is kind of falls in that realm of I've seen this story before and I've seen it done better. Not the biggest fan of the art. I think the Batgirl stuff at the beginning looked good. The stuff in the middle was all right. When Joker showed up, that was rough. That was pretty rough. The biggest thing I'm going to notice is that Batgirl's costume is colored differently. We've seen a black cape on it's been black on black with yellow belt and then yellow symbol. Here we're seeing a gray suit with yellow belt, yellow symbol, and like a light navy blue cape and cowl. That's much more reminiscent of like the original Batgirl costume. I don't know if that is intentional here or it's a total mistake because it's been pretty much black on black up until this point. That was my biggest takeaway was this. Oh yeah, is Batgirl's costume is colored differently here, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I like the art probably a lot more than you. I think there is some inconsistency like throughout the whole story, but I think Guy Davis, his like detailed style, he does really well in the rubble and
Yeah,
like when you're getting Riley's backstory and you see like the evolving city, like when in his heyday and then as the city went downturn and then after the quake, I like Guy Davis's architecture and like detail on the buildings and then eventually the rubble and everything.
yeah. I think all of the landscape stuff is fine. I think the cover on this is probably the roughest part of the whole issue. I just thought that once Joker shows up, it definitely took a dip in quality for me. Other than that, like I think it was fine, but not the style of art I prefer. But I think definitely for this kind of event where you're trying to capture, like kind of knocked over buildings and rubble, I think he is really, really good for that, like you said. Michael, anything to add on Shadow of the Bat number 86?
I enjoyed it overall. This might have been one of the stronger ones from this episode, I thought. The art I thought was mostly well done, even though it's not usually like my favorite style. I do agree the Joker looked really weird in the end, though. And I feel like the story maybe ended a little anticlimactically, like Joker just barges in and kills everyone, and then it kind of just ends, but sort of fits with the whole, just slice of life in no man's land. Like it's not meant Like, I don't think it's really meant to have a real beginning, middle, and end. But yeah, this is a pretty decent. This is a decent issue. I'd say a solid issue.
Yeah, I think I would say it's like a perfect like 6 out of 10. Like if you were to rate it like fine mid tier issue, especially it's Shadow of the Bat, which is like what the fourth Batman book in terms of most important ones right now. So if you're getting that on that series, I think that's pretty good. But I think we've definitely read better from this series though.
Yeah.
But let's head over to Batman number 566. We don't have anything else to say on Shadow of the Bat, which is the Visitor, and Superman shows up. Everybody, isn't that great?
Yeah.
And we have Kelly Puckett writing, and John Bogdanov is going to be penciling. John Bogdanov did a lot of, I believe, the Man of Steel series with Louise Simonson in the 90s. And I thought that I've always been a big fan of him. Something on the coloring on this issue is really, really odd. In terms of, I don't know, like it looks different. Like it looks like I'm looking at a cartoon. Like Michael, to you, does this look like it's straight out of like New Batman Adventures, Superman animated series? To you, because I think the way it's
Yeah.
colored, the way Bogdanov's art looks, it looks a lot like that to me.
Yeah, I definitely got that from a lot of panels. Looked vaguely Ed McGuinnessy to me. I haven't read a lot of
Yeah,
his work.
yeah. No, I completely agree. Bogdanov is usually kind of known for like these like really really strong jaw lines, and
Mhm.
it's his Superman looks more like kind of almost classic Superman. Like the faces look different for me here, but it almost
Yeah.
looks like I don't mean this as a slight to Bogdanov because I like him. It almost looks like the stuff you'd see on like a commercial, kind of like remember how Marvel has like their standard commercial art that you like. It's that same issue of Spider-Man you've seen like on a sticker pack for like 15 years now. You understand what I'm talking about? This looks like that
Yeah, yeah.
DC. Kind of like, all right, these are the evergreen models that we'll use for advertising.
Hmm.
Um, but I like the look of it though. The whole crux of the issue is that Superman is now here in Gotham and he's going to see what he can do to help. Batman's like, he doesn't want him there. He actually says, you have 24 hours to see how much help you can actually do. And then I'm going to ask you to leave. And Superman's big order business is helping this engineer to try to get the power station back on so he can restore power to Gotham City. Because we're in the winter. It's really cold, and we've already seen people kind of battle for clothes and especially coats. Like they're a high commodity item now, and with that, they need power to get heat back to the city. And I really, really liked the moments of like Superman trying to inspire hope in this guy, of this engineer who was like, I don't know how we're going to be able to do this. So they are able to get the whole thing working in 4 hours, but it quickly kind of like it powers up for a little bit and then it completely goes out again as Mr. Freeze and other thugs kind of like throw in to the power station as they're like, because he who controls the power in the city pretty much controls the city with the way it's going. I did like the moment of Superman giving the engineer the chief engineer's hat that he finds. I thought that was a really cool moment. But this guy is now getting bombarded by a bunch of citizens that want their power restored, and like now they're giving them offers of food and different equipment, because that's how No Man's Land we've seen works. If you want something, you got to give something, and he's kind of overwhelmed by that. Meanwhile, Superman's fighting Mr. Freeze, and I enjoyed the fight with Mr. Freeze. I hate this Mr. Freeze design though; it's so bad. It's so
Yeah. Might be
uh,
like the worst. It'd be worse than his Batman Robin design, which is clearly riffing on. Maybe.
it's no clearly riffing on that, definitely, and I think it would be better if you were to just. Would this design look better if, like, let's say that, like, it was a standard piece on the chest, you still had the light blue on the appendages, but, like, just give him the big red belt, and it would look a lot better. It looks so busy. That's the problem with it.
Yeah. Like with the armor chunks over like the light blue part, like in a wide shot especially, it almost looks like he's wearing some kind of like, I don't know, swim trunks and like a really small shirt over like a blue body or something. I don't know. It's then like yeah, his fingers and his abdomen are like so like I guess he's just like frozen the rest of that, or that's like glassish material. I don't know. It just doesn't look very good.
Yeah, it's bad. It's we've talked about it before. It's flat out bad. Um, but the citizens of Gotham are all swarming this power plant, and overwhelming even Superman. So Superman gets a lesson, kind of how broken the society in No Man's Land is, and Batman kind of gives him, it only took you a day to figure that out. It took me longer. And it shows that not even Superman can kind of help instill hope, even if he's only here for a day. And I thought this was a good device to show why Superman or like other heroes just can't show up and make it all better in like 24 hours. Because I think that was definitely, I think if you talk about No Man's Land to someone who hasn't read it, they'd be like, well, why don't the other heroes just show up? I think this gave a great excuse for why that can't just be simplified like that.
Yeah, so I've had some technical difficulties real quick, but my main point on this issue is exactly what Mike just said. This answers like that crucial fanboy question, and it's a good showing for Superman, but at the same time also puts over Batman as the one to ultimately solve No Man's Land. So I think it's handled really well.
Do you want to comment on any of the Superman moments here? Because I thought Superman was really strong in this issue.
I mean, not specifically. I think he's cool. I feel like the whole factory parts. It's not entirely clear. Obviously, you see him like reattaching some cables and stuff, but I feel like the implication was that the guys kind of the engineer knows what he's doing and is directing Superman and supervising him. And what I was expecting was to see like super speed feats of, oh, this would, repairing a power plant and restoring a power grid with two guys, that should take a long ass time or be impossible. So I was expecting to see like, oh,
it took him at
Superman
least 4 hours.
What?
It took him at least 4 hours.
Yeah, I know, but which I feel like Superman must have use some feats beyond the few you see. So I think it would have been a cool opportunity to show him like super speeding around, helping out.
But anything to talk on John Bogdanov's art? Because I gave a rundown on that.
Yeah, so I'm not certain what you said. Again, took a little difficulty, but I think he's a really perfect choice for this issue. Obviously, he's one of the signature Superman artists, especially of this era.
Yeah, with Man of Steel. I commented he was on the Man of Steel team with Louise Simonson.
Yeah, he drew like pretty much 80 issues of that, including the first issue. They launched that title together, and they had worked previously together on Power Pack, and then they both launched Steel, following the death of Superman, Reign of the Superman arc. And yeah, I mean, it's really cool that they did get a Superman artist for this issue.
Yeah, definitely.
And of the era, I mean, you could have gone with like Dan Jurgens, or honestly, in this era, it would have been interesting because it would have also worked. We could have seen Stuart Immonen or something. But Bogdanov, definitely a great choice, and he's one of my favorite Superman artists.
Yeah, I commented on like he's kind of known for like the really really strong jaw lines, but it's kind of more reined in here where his face on Superman is a much more like kind of classic Superman look, and not really his like kind of signature defined jawline that I've come to know. I just thought that was a different change, but still it looks great. The colors are great. The suit popped, so I got nothing but praise for this issue.
Michael, I mean, Mr. Freeze is he's kind of just ancillary.
Yeah, we talked about Mr. Freeze. Yeah. It's not good. But Michael, bring us home.
Okay. got Detective Comics 733 next. Let's see, where were the credits on this issue? Oh, I think the credits aren't till the end on this one.
Yeah, they're at the end.
Written by Bob Gale, penciled by Phil Winslade, inked by Phil Winslade and Sal Buscema. So yeah, this issue, that was fairly condensed actually. Like a couple like little mini stories happen before like the main one or two stories of the issue, and there's kind of a lot of action per page. But yeah, I think this one is a bit of a longer read. I think because of that, not like just like compared to the other issues, I suppose. So yeah, it starts at um, uh, Gordon and the Blue Boys are sneaking into Batgirl's territory to see what her deal is, and so they just have an exchange. Gordon makes clear that he's still pissed at Batman and he doesn't want Batman coming into his territory. And but yeah, Batgirl's clear that they can be in that they're perfectly welcome in Bat territory. We get a brief moment with him and Sarah's telling him he's maybe not being rational, maybe like yeah, whatever. We then get a brief scene where the Penguin discovers that somehow some goods from outside of Gotham are getting in without his knowledge and not because of him. So I guess that's a mystery that'll be solved later on. And Penguin kind of ironically says, "Damn, the city's going to hell," which, like, yeah, I think, oh wow, something
Worse,
slightly good starts happening, but bad for him. So, yep, that's just how much of a dick the Penguin is. So yeah, then we get to uh, probably the C plot this issue. Some guys apparently beating someone to death, calling him a bum. Batman catches him and he's like, "Oh, you're taking me to Blackgate. That's where the murderers go. I'm a murderer." And Batman's like, "Wait, something's weird about this. Oh, this guy's been dead for days. He was beating up a corpse. You're not a murderer." And the guy's like, "No, I want to go to Blackgate. It's supposed to be safer there." And Batman's like, "Yeah, I'm not locking a non-murderer in prison," but he's kind of perturbed by this, especially when the guy's like, "Hey, if I die, it'll be your fault." And Batman's kind of thinking, maybe I should help him out. So on his way to meeting with Batgirl, he runs into what's pretty much the A plot of the issue, which is two women fighting over a baby. And it comes out that neither of them's really the baby's biological mother, but they both think they have claims to the baby. One of them promised the mom she'd take care of him, and the other found him while the first woman was out looking for supplies and thought the baby was abandoned. So Batman sees two women fighting over a baby, and his first thought is what anybody with knowledge of the Old Testament's first thought would be. He thinks of the wisdom of Solomon when King Solomon was faced with a similar dispute, and he said, "Fine, I'll cut the baby in half, give half to each of you." And the first woman to speak up and say, "No, don't kill the baby, give him to the other woman. Oh, she must be the real mother. She's the one who cares the most about the baby." But this backfires on him because they're both just like, "Hey, that's terrible. Don't do that, you jerk." Like they both just have basically the same response at the same time, and Batman's just like, "Hey, yeah, that's not gonna work." And he temporarily takes the baby, and so he meets with Batgirl. He's surprised to learn that Gordon's mad at him and doesn't want him in his territory. Well, he might not be that surprised that Gordon's mad at him, but he's surprised at the extent of it. And he comes home to one of his bat caves. Alfred notices something's wrong because he puts his bat suit on backwards after he showers. And Batman says he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do with the baby. He doesn't know how to handle the guy who wants to go to prison. So Alfred's like, let me tell you a story about your father being faced with a moral dilemma. But take off your mask first. I told you as Bruce, not as Batman. So in this story, it's basically like, it starts out with just basically standard philosophy 101 moral dilemma. Dr. Thomas Wayne's tending a patient who the only chance of saving him is a special drug that's only available at a store that's closed, and there's no time for him to go to a different store. So he breaks into the store and leaves a note to explain what happened because the police show up like before he can do anything more I don't know. Actually, I don't know what the police showing up, how that complicated things. But anyway, the kid dies anyway, unfortunately, and then he basically gets suckered into like being blackmailed by the store owner because the store owner claims that he got robbed of all his money after he took the medicine, and he like makes Thomas give him the money under threat of telling the police what happened and showing them the note he wrote in his own handwriting to prove it. And at first, Thomas thinks like, "Oh yeah, I should help him out," but then it gradually becomes apparent that he's just stealing money from him, and he doesn't know what to do. He's putting his clothes on backwards, and him and Alfred hatch a plan to have Alfred impersonate a policeman, and uh yeah, he accuses him of forging the note, has him hand over the note, kind of turns the tables on him, and then Alfred finishes off, and he manages to get the note from him and burn it, and he doesn't have to keep paying this guy. And Alfred like caps off this story with like, yeah, he committed all these crimes in a short amount of time, technically, but he slept well that night. He believed he did the right thing, even though he technically broke several laws in the process. And uh, this kind of encourages Batman. He has Batgirl tell the guy who wanted to go to prison, like give him a job, basically, like, yeah, go shovel stuff for the Blue Boys, they'll protect you. And then he makes a deal with the two women to agree to raise the baby together, basically. And oh wow, I didn't even notice this the first time I read it. The baby's name's Thomas. I wonder if that's intended as a
Batman names it.
What'd they say?
Batman tells them that the baby's name is Thomas.
Oh, wait. When is that? Am I not noticing where the word bubble's pointing?
It's before he tells them to shake his hands. So, but yeah, continue.
Wait, I don't see that.
Maybe it's in there, maybe it's not.
I mean,
okay,
it is.
but
Reddit.
But yeah, that's the end of the issue. The women share the baby. The guy finds work, and the name of the issue, not revealed until the end, is Shades of Grey because of the themes of the issue, obviously. So, yeah. I don't know. Do you guys want to give your thoughts since I just gave a long summary?
Yeah. I thought this was the absolute definition of fine. I think Bob Gale's trying to do way too much, kind of packed into 22 pages here. I think he should have gone with one story instead of several plots here. I think he should have just gone with the baby and the moment with Gordon and the story with Thomas Wayne. That's what I would have gone with. I think inserting that other guy in there was just it bogged this down. But I will comment on Ellie DeVille's lettering. This is one of the worst lettered issues I've ever seen, where the boxes are way too small and the words are compressed a lot. And then we have like the boxes taking up long strands of the panels within the pages. It's a mess. Like, this is not good in terms of
What I'll say is, and this sort of slightly ties into what's going on in the Batman books in 2019. I don't care about any version of Thomas Wayne at all. I really don't care about the Waynes. I don't care to even see them die again and again. Like, the backstory of them is completely uninteresting to me. And
It doesn't really matter.
This issue, it felt like literally half the issue is Thomas Wayne's adventures, and I'm like, I don't care.
right.
Obviously, there's not really action or anything.
I don't like. I'm good for like a story like this where it's trying to connect it, inspire Bruce. Like, that's fine. But like I'm never gonna read a Thomas Wayne miniseries. Because he's like Gwen Stacy. He exists to die, and that's it. Like, just like Jor-El. Of course, Jor-El's back, so who cares anymore?
Well, he's closer to Jor-El, because at least Gwen Stacy had almost like 100 issues or something of character development.
I joke about Gwen, but
yeah. But Thomas Wayne, his purpose is literally to never be seen, to just die in the backstory.
But I will say, to comment on the art, he's drawn like exactly the way Bruce looks in this. Phil Winslade could have easily like just stick the mustache on him, like show him looking different from Bruce in some way. Like, I just felt that like the decision to make him look exactly like Bruce was pretty lazy.
Yeah, and then the fake murder thing is kind of interesting, but we've like totally seen that multiple times with the whole status quo of Blackgate and Lockup and KG Beast and everything like that. So that it was an interesting concept in like the first 2 pages when you realize this guy set up a fake murder and Bruce instantly realizes it and like doesn't entirely know how to react. But we've seen this scene. Overall, I mean, honestly, I think this was the weakest story and the weakest issue.
Yeah.
For this episode, but it's not bad or anything. So that's pretty much this episode. Hopefully, I don't have technical difficulties next episode. I don't really know why I'm having them. Next time,
we made it work.
Yeah. Next time, we're going to read some more Azrael. So that should be fun.
It should be. I'm looking forward to it, which is weird.
Yep. Thanks for watching this episode. Tune in next time. Watch our other shows. Get home safe. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
As we uncomfortably wait for the timer to end.
I haven't even pressed it yet. Now I have.
Oh, cool.